Good evening and welcome to our regular council meeting this October 21st. Moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, second by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that the October 21st, 2024 council meeting of the Township of South Glengarry now be opened at 7:11 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Before getting into it, I would like to apologize for being a little late. We had a committee of adjustment meeting go into overtime just a bit. And additionally, I also wanted to note that Councillor McNell has sent his regrets. And as it is a family matter, I would just like to highlight that he is attending, I guess, a remembrance of his uncle Chris McDonnell. And he was an SD&G warden and North Glengarry mayor for a good amount of time. He was also a councillor and a deputy, I believe, before that. And I think he was the warden in 2009, if I'm correct. So he served all of us on our upper level. So I'm sad to see that, and I'm glad that Sam took the time to be with his family at this moment. So he sends his regrets. If we could all rise for the singing of O Canada. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move into the approval agenda. Are there any amendments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, we have one addition to the agenda this evening, that being it'll be item 7C under action requests, and it is a report regarding Community Sport and Recreation Infrastructure Fund. We also have several items that have been requested to be pulled from the consent agenda for discussion, those being item 10A, the departmental reports for quarter 3, 10B, Household Hazardous Waste Day report, item 10C, the website CMS migration and refresh report, and item 10G, the Good Roads establishment of an Ontario Rural Road Safety Program.
Thank you very much. Moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor? Carried. Into the approval of the previous minutes, were there any errors or omissions noted? Seeing none, moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be resolved that the minutes of the following meetings be adopted as circulated. Special meeting minutes October 2nd, 2024. Previous meeting minutes October 7th, 2024. Public meeting minutes October 7th, 2024. All those in favor? Carried. Moving into action requests, we'll get to 7A, approval of the 2025 council meeting schedule. Moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-111 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry approves the 2025 council meeting schedule as presented in Appendix A of this report. Mrs. Campo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. This report comes to council on the heels of our discussion at the last meeting regarding the procedural bylaw. And this report is one that comes annually and is required through our procedural bylaw, which establishes our council meeting schedule for the following year. So what you'll find a little different in this year's report is that I've incorporated the feedback from council regarding the procedural bylaw. So once that is passed, hopefully within the next 2 meetings, our council meetings will in 2025 will be held on the second and fourth Mondays of each month as opposed to the first and third. A couple of other items to note from the report. The schedule that's before you this evening proposes only one meeting in the months of August and December. For the month of August, we're proposing to cancel the first meeting in the month, which would fall on the Monday immediately following the Williamstown Fair, taking into account that a lot of members of council spend most of their weekend helping out at the fair or participating, and so it might be a little difficult for you to get your agenda reading in. And then the December proposal is to cancel the second meeting, as it would fall quite close to the Christmas holidays, just in the event that anyone is planning any vacation around that time. And then the only other significant change is that in the last number of years, we've held our summer meetings virtually to accommodate the Boys and Girls Club Summer Camp that takes place here in Tartan Hall. But based on the feedback received from council, the schedule for 2025 proposes that those meetings be held in person. And if we're unable to accommodate the Boys and Girls Club on those days, we'll find an alternate location to hold our council meetings in person.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from council? All right. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to 7B, direction to prepare RFP for drinking water financial plan. Moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that Staff Report 2024-112 be received and that the Council of the Township of South Glengarry direct administration to prepare a request for proposal to update the Infrastructure Capital Master Plan and an RFP to prepare a water financial plan to satisfy the requirements of the upcoming drinking water license renewal application. Ms. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. This is a request to prepare ourselves for submitting our 2025 application to renew our drinking water license, which covers all three drinking water systems, Lancaster, Glen Walter, and Redwood. Our drinking water license allows us to, it's not the permit to take, it's actually our license to treat water and provide it under the Safe Drinking Water Act. So it's something that we need to pursue and need to be ready for. Mr. Seguin, our Director of Water and Wastewater, and I attended a meeting with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks earlier this year, where they really impressed upon all the municipal attendees that through this round of application reviews and renewals for the drinking water license, that the MECP would really be focusing on like a number of items. However, the key one was this drinking water license and the financial plan that pins it, and I believe that's in response to everyone saying our drinking water systems are needing more funding. So they're hoping that municipalities will continue to plan for the future, and this is going to be like a really important part of our application. So we are asking for direction in advance of budget to prepare an RFP. It would then be approved through budget. We wouldn't expend any money externally in 2024, so no impact this year. But we're just hoping to get ahead of timelines so that we can have our 2008 capital infrastructure study updated. And that's just a very long Excel table that our mayor is probably very familiar with from his previous time, that has every asset in a drinking water system and a cost allocated to it and a renewal year on it. So that has been updated over the years, but our baseline data is 2008. And Mr. Seguin and I both feel that that's a little bit far, and then we're hoping that we can get on every 10-year rotation. So every 10 years, take a refresh of this, and then administratively in those, intermediate, in the interim years, we can do it in-house. But if we can refresh it every 10th, that would be wonderful, and that would align with every second drinking water license. This is something we do every 5 years. Once we have that done, then we would undertake our financial plan for the drinking water system, which is something that our treasurer and I will work on an RFP for that. But right now, we're really just looking for the go-ahead from council, the approval to get rocking on our RFP so we can award it early January and have all these documents in hand and ready to go to the MECP in July of 2025, and hopefully have our license in hand for December 2025. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I think it's a great idea to be ahead of the game and get moving on it. Myself having no idea what this involves, are we looking at something that you think is in the neighborhood of, a few $1,000s or $100,000? I just kind of, and I know you're not going to be able to put a number on it, but you might be able to tell me the ballpark range that we're talking about.
Excellent question, Deputy Mayor, and through you, Mr. Mayor. That is really the question. Nothing seems to cost us less than $20,000 per study, so at a minimum 40, and I think that we can scale it somewhere between 40 and 80,000 for both studies, depending on how much work we are able to handle in-house. And when we really get into it, the current, it's not status, but how good our initial data is. So through the capital planning, if we've added things, I believe it's been a few years since we've gone through and done a line by line, so unfortunately that puts us a few years behind. So 40 to 80,000 is my gut. And if council has kind of a number that they'd like to help us scope this better, we'll take that into consideration. And I'm kind of excited to have CAO Fothrop, who is going to help us on this one.
If I'm channeling my inner Councillor McDonnell, that's likely we'd prefer, like thousands rather than tens of thousands. And the nature of it is that we should really do it because my previous experience was with, I think I did it with Mr. Sege, 1 year with him where I updated those numbers, but they were still based on that 2000. So it's a practice worth doing. It's just, as you said, like if it's 40,000, it's kind of hard to stomach, but if that's the cost, I think, I don't, I'm just thinking of Councillor McDonnell there. Councillor Bougie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. And I would agree. I mean, 2008 is a long time ago, and I don't know what annual increase was kind of put into at that place. Maybe the rate of inflation, which was 2-3%, and now we're looking at prices that are far surpassing that. So I think it's a worthwhile study, and I mean, I'm sure with you, Sarah, and Dylan looking through those numbers, I'm sure that they're fairly off at this point, I would think, so they need some readjustment. But yeah, I think it's a worthwhile exercise to kind of forecast future costs, absolutely. And I can't really put a number on how much, because I'm not familiar with it, but.
Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor McDonald. Thank you, Ms. McDonald, for bringing this forward. I guess, I mean, obviously, we'd always like to save money if we can, but one thing, and I don't know what options you have in terms of the structuring of the RFP, but I feel like we've had some consultants in the last little while sort of maybe not provide the value that we were hoping for in terms of like the reports back. So I don't know what you can do in terms of, solidifying it so that we can really feel like we'll get very diligent and timely and, so numbers that we can really use going forward. So just I'm sure you're already keeping that in mind, but I felt the need to say it out loud.
And maybe somewhat cheekily, if you could please, whenever they come to present, let them know that we read our agendas so they don't need to read the slides verbatim, add value with their presentations. Deputy Mayor Lang?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just because we're talking money and so forth, just so that anybody might be watching the meeting, it's not likely, I would assume, not coming out of the tax dollars, it's coming out of but I know our people that are paying our water bills are already likely a little worried about some of the upgrades we need to do, and we don't want to spend any more money than we have to, but it isn't coming out of the general tax dollars.
All right. With that questions being asked, all those in favor of the motion as read? Carried. Moving to added item 7C, Community Sport and Recreation Infrastructure Fund, updated resolution. Moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-120 be received and that administration is directed to submit an application to the Community Sport and Recreation Infrastructure Fund as part of Stream 1, Repair and Rehabilitation, to rehabilitate the Charland Recreation Center with capital improvements, including the replacement of the arena roof, cladding, and insulation that will extend the life of this important community facility in the township of South Glengarry, and furthermore, that council supports this project and approves the use of municipal funds of up to $1.23 million to complete this capital project as part of the funding opportunity within the 24-month period as stipulated in the funding requirements. Ms. Harpers.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. So you will recall that administration was directed to apply for the Community Sport and Recreation Infrastructure Fund back in September. So administration has been working on the application and pulling together all the required documentation, and also working with consultant on costing. Since this since the meeting in September, we did have a one-on-one meeting with the funding rep for clarification on several items for the application. With every grant application, there's guidelines that come out, and, you know, not everything is always perfectly clear, so it's good to have these one-on-one meetings. And as part of those meetings, as outlined obviously in our report here, some items were clarified. So I did explain that that the province will fund up to 50%, or for municipalities with 20,000 population or less, you could apply for 70%. Further discussions with our funding rep, basically if you want to apply for 70%, you need to be under extreme circumstances that would require this, like, I'm not sure if there, you know, tragic events or something that with your building to qualify for that 70%. And in those discussions, it's kind of been, you know, determined that our municipality likely wouldn't qualify for that. And we have to apply, do our regular application and also a supplement application for the 70%. So it will not jeopardize our 50% application, but I'm just, you know, letting you know the reality of those requirements. Also not included in the application guidelines was that the council resolution requires further details than, you know, the report that we had back in September. So the big part of that is having the costing that council will commit to as part of the resolution. So I'm glad that we were able to get those details. Obviously, you know, it was great to have this report in September, so we had the direction to move forward with getting costing information and those details. But at this point now, we have to bring it back to include the costing and a few more details, obviously, in the resolution to include in our application. You know, personally, in funding applications, I've never had to include this type of detail in our application. However, the province is, you know, funding with 200 million across the province, and it's very clear that they want to ensure that whoever they are providing these funds to is basically ready to go, and they have council's commitment so that they don't get in a position of providing these funds and then a municipality has to pull back or can't actually do the project, so then they're finding someone else for the funds, and they have the 24-month timeline, so that then delays it. So, you know, it's pretty clear that they want to make sure that whoever they are awarding it to is ready to go. So, I mean, the resolution for that makes sense. Although, you know, the project does include roofing, siding, insulation, that's like the major part of the project. I did mention in the report too that we did consider other items, obviously, as electrical that would be affected by removing siding and such. And also some ventilation and HVAC items, which would benefit, you know, the temperature and moisture control in the facility. And then also a couple of the doors, you know, to make sure that the cold part is sealed properly, ones that are outdated or require that replacement. And yeah, so basically, obviously, I included in this report that the funding, the amount that did come in as an estimate is the 2.2 million, and the funding will, if we got 50%, would be up to 1 million. So then we're in a position of needing to commit to the remainder of the cost of the project. And obviously, I do appreciate council's understanding while we try to pull all this information together. If approved, then we can continue with the application. I do want to mention that a triple check on our reserve for the recreation building reserve is the 340,000 in the report plus 150 that was put in the account for 2024. So technically, we will have a 2024 year ending of 490,000. So number 6 on your report is actually 490,000. Not sure if that, you know, changes what your decision is tonight, but we just got that information a few hours ago, so I wanted to make sure that you're aware of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I suppose we started with this with kind of supporting it in theory, and now the numbers in front of us to determine if we support it in practice. Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Yeah, I guess we got to step up to the plate now and commit, you know, but I'm having no problem committing. I think we all know this building needs a good overhaul before too long in the next few years, and it would be an awful big help to have $1 million to do it, rather than have to do it all ourselves. And I don't know what they allow, but if we're at 490 and they're 50%, you know, if the estimate is at 2.2, maybe we do what we can up to $1 million to get the maximum funding, and put our $1 million in to match it. And so we need to come up with a little over $500,000 for next. I assume it has to be next year. Is 24 months? Would we be able to do it over 2 budgets?
Technically, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, technically it's 24 months from when we receive, enter into an agreement. So we probably will still have another funding cycle or a budget cycle, because we're not going to find out immediately that we've received it, so.
Yeah. And the other thing is, we likely could put it off for 4 or 5 years, but the costs are not going to be 2.2 anymore. They're going to be 3.2 likely, but then I don't know. Maybe not, but just the way it's been going.
Well, those are fair points. Councillor Bougie?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the presentation. I definitely agree. I mean, the roof siding alone, the amount of probably heat loss that we have right now trying to cool the arena, and I couldn't even imagine the cost of that. So with these upgrades, hopefully the energy efficiency will be improved. And then, like Deputy Mayor Lang said, just the cost, everything's going to get more expensive. So we might as well jump on this and try to improve the arena.
Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Certainly, I don't want to repeat what was already said. I agree with what's been said. And just to add that, we have the reserve funding specifically for things like this. And so when we have opportunities to maximize what we've been putting in the reserve for these specific reasons, I think that's showing, respect to the taxpayers' money that we have collected for these reasons. So, thanks.
Yes, and there might be some consideration at 8C. We'll have a conversation about the proceeds from a sale of former Williamstown Fire Hall, which is a building. So that we, maybe not now, but like that's something that could further go into a building fund. And it's always good to have a big project in front of us going into budget, because as a fan of reserves, I have been since 2014, it just reminds us that, putting money in consistently over time, so when something like this comes up, it's better to have $500,000 in rather than starting at zero. So I have to appreciate all the previous councils that put that in before. All those in favor of the motion as read. Carried. Thank you. Moving into bylaws. Excuse me. Municipal Access Agreement, Rogers Communications Canada. Moved by Councillor Bougie, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that Staff Report 2024-113 be received, and that Bylaw 2024-64, being a bylaw to enter into municipal access agreement with Rogers Communication Incorporated for the expansion of high-speed internet service, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 21st day of October 2024. And furthermore, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign all applicable documents. Ms. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a pretty quick one. It's to enter into a municipal access agreement with Rogers, who has been undertaking all the underground fiber work here in South Glengarry through the Accelerated High-Speed Internet Program. In my report, you'll note that the Act doesn't require that they enter into an agreement with us, a municipality, and that we can't refuse to process applications due to a lack of an agreement. So it's really nice that Rogers has, at least in this area, taking a look at what we use as a standard across SDNG. They've made a few minor modifications that seem acceptable to us, and they've offered up this municipal access agreement. And it just governs the who, the what, and the how within our right-of-way in terms of maintenance to their fiber, if we damage it, if they damage it, if they need to come in, how we go about permitting them through this, I think it's a 3-year process that we're in the middle of. And I can't remember, did I put in? So this year, we've received over 100 municipal consent applications. I believe this is a typo in my report. So we are receiving applications, and they're really going to work here in South Glengarry. And I don't know if council remembers the map, but this really services all of South Glengarry, less, I think it might have been Councillor McDonnell's road, but pretty much every other road in South Glengarry is getting fiber. Thank you.
Yes, and if I may ask administration to send me that map, I couldn't find it recently, and then a citizen did ask me about it, so if I could get that as a personal favor. Councillor Bougie?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to add, we did meet with Rogers in Ottawa, and we had some positive conversation. They were very receptive. We had different issues. We kind of passed by them, but no, we definitely brought up as well, not only high-speed internet, but cellular reception in some of our hamlets. So they seemed on board and willing to help. So we'll take any help from any company that wants to help us with those issues. So thank you.
Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. Like Ms. McDonald said, the map you're looking for really does just look like a map of South Glengarry. Like when it was first presented, I literally said, I think there's a mistake because it just looks like the map. But my question though to you, Ms. McDonald, is there a little bit, any more clarity on how quickly the work will happen or when they expect to be done in South Glengarry?
I think they had a December 31st, was it 2025 deadline? That was, they kept saying that in our meeting. That was, oh, is there more clarity? Yes, thank you. Good point.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, not to date, but after, when we provide our hopefully signed municipal access agreement, we can ask for an update and see if they've been, how they're doing with installing against the number of municipal consents that we have authorized, because with 100, that should be quite a swath of South Glengarry that we've allowed work in.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Lang?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Yeah, there was a bit of an update at, I sat in on the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus there last week, and they're pretty much on schedule is what they're saying. They weren't committing that they're 100% on schedule, but they're very close to being on schedule, so it sounded positive. And something to just add to what Councillor Bougie had said, when we met with them, we asked them, if they were, pleased with the service of South Glengarry, and they said you guys were wonderful to work with. So they were quite complimentary that our staff was looking after them. So.
And if I may put a name to it, just because it's not you, this time, it was Belinda Dixon that they mentioned her specifically, and I don't know if that was, I think she's doing most of the work, just to, yes, clarify. I'm not being rude here, just to, so it's Belinda's credit, and as she's not here, she doesn't normally get it, so thank you, Belinda, on camera. Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you. Thank you, through you, Mayor. Since we're on the topic of the positive sides of this, I mean, it's always a good opportunity to reiterate that whilst Rogers is doing this work, I mean, they, will potentially ask homeowners if they want to have the fiber run to their home. And as I understand it, like this is if they're doing it, if they're running it down, and at that time they make that offer and the person agrees, like there's no cost to that, and there's also no commitment as well. So it's something that likely homeowners should take advantage of when it is offered, because once they've passed and having it run, there's going to be significant cost to that to the homeowner.
That is a very fair point. Answer the door, please, is what we're trying to say. Any further questions? All those in favor of the motion as read? Carried. We'll move to Lancaster Library lease agreement, moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be resolved that staff report 2024-114 be received in the bylaw 2024-65, being a bylaw to enter into a lease agreement between the Corporation of the Township of South Glengarry and the Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry County Library Board, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 21st day of October 2024. Ms. Harbers.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. This is pretty straightforward, but it is just to enter into the lease agreement with the SDG counties for the Lancaster Library building. This was brought to County Council later this summer, so we're just bringing it to our council this evening. Thank you.
Are there any questions? No? All in favor of the motion as read? Carried. Thank you. Now to sale of the former Williamstown Fire Station, moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Deputy Mayor Lang. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-115 be received and the bylaw 2024-66, being a bylaw to authorize the sale of the lands legally described as Lot 21 on Registered Plan 19 in the geographic township of Charlottenburg, now in the township of South Glengarry, PIN 6712104448, located at 19652 John Street, to the St. Lawrence Valley Agricultural Society, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 21st day of October 2024. Mrs. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On November 6th of 2023, the former Williamstown Fire Station was declared surplus by council. That permitted staff to move forward to do some research on the property, and on September 19th, 2024, the former Williamstown Fire Station was listed for sale by our real estate agent, Mr. Warden, who's on retainer and contract with the township. The township has received an offer to purchase the former Williamstown Fire Hall from the St. Lawrence Agricultural Society, also known as the Williamstown Fair Board, at a value of $105,000, with a proposed closing date of October 30th. Administration is recommending to council to accept the offer, and the offer will be subject to the payment of HST, as well as the township's legal costs to transfer the land. Attached, you will find a bylaw that will authorize the sale of the former Williamstown Fire Hall, and the recommendation is that the council supports the staff report and authorizes the mayor and clerk to sign the applicable documents. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from around the table? Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor McDonald. I was hoping, Ms. Haley, as you're able, if you could share some more details regarding the benefits that are coming with this specific offer.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. So first of all, the subject property is zoned institutional, which is a very common zone for municipally owned land. The land's owned by the Fair Board that's adjacent to this property is also zoned institutional. And it's very common for agricultural society or Fair Board lands to be zoned that. And the use that the Fair Board is proposing fits within the institutional zone. So there's going to be compatibility both from a land use planning perspective as well as from an abutting property owner perspective. I also suspect we'll see very little change with the structure in terms of how the structure is looked, maintained, operated, and the community is anticipated to be able to benefit from that shared space, whether it be parking, storage, etc.
Thank you very much. Any further comments? Okay. All those in favor of the motion as read? Carried. Moving to Keneb zoning bylaw amendment, moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that staff report 2024-116 be received and that bylaw 2024-67, being a bylaw to amend bylaw 3809 to rezone the land legally described as Lot 8 on Plan 162 in the geographic township of Charlottenburg, now in the township of South Glengarry, county of Glengarry, located at 18548 Stonehouse Point Road, from estate residential ER and floodplain holding FPH to estate residential exception 1 ER1 and floodplain holding FPH. To permit up to 2 secondary dwelling units, 3 dwelling units total, on the subject property be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed this 21st day of October 2024. Mrs. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you mentioned, this property is located at 18548 Stonehouse Point Road and located in the Stonehouse Point subdivision. On September 6, 2024, the township received a zoning amendment application requesting permission to have a third dwelling unit be placed on the property. Today, all parcels of property in South Glengarry can accommodate 2 dwellings. That dwelling can either be located within the existing structure or within a detached structure, or excuse me, within a detached structure such as a shed or a garage. A portion of it could be converted, or we could have a complete second home. So when an individual is looking to have a third dwelling unit, it does result in a zoning amendment. If this amendment were to be approved, it would mean that the property would be now zoned as a site-specific amendment known as a State Residential 1 that would permit up to 2 secondary units that are additional to the existing one. You'll see in my staff report, we speak to the applicable official plan and provincial policy statement policies. Interestingly, a new provincial policy came into effect yesterday on October 20th. So in writing this staff report, Mr. Irwin did a detailed comparison to determine the differences between the PPS 2020 and the PPS 2024. So moving forward, you're going to hear us talk about the new provincial policy statement 2024 from now on. You'll see that staff is recommending this application to be approved, as when we went through the public process, we had a meeting on October 7th. There was no members of the public in attendance. We didn't receive any written or verbal comments. And the Conservation Authority was also circulated on this application, and they have no concerns or objection to the proposed amendment. If council approves it this evening, a decision will be made on day 40, and we do recommend that it be approved so that someday it's possible for 2 additional dwelling units be built on this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments around the table? All those in favor of the motion as read? Carried. Thank you. There's a little jump scare there. It's Happy Halloween, so to speak. Moving to revised grants and donations policy, moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that staff report 117 be received, and that bylaw 2024-68 being a bylaw to adopt a community grants and donations policy for the Township of South Glengarry be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 21st day of October 2024. Mrs. Campo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Although my name is on the report, this was very much a collaborative effort between the Finance Department and Corporate Services, and Ms. Dixon, our Deputy Clerk, did a lot of policy research for us, so we thank her for that. So the revised policy that's before you this evening is being brought forward because during the 2024 budget deliberations, Council expressed that they would like to see this policy revisited and updated. So what's before you this evening is a revised policy which incorporates the feedback that was received from Council at that time. Ms. Dixon diligently went back and rewatched the meeting and took down lots of good notes of what Council wanted to see come forward, and also incorporates some best practices that we identified through our policy research. So subject to any questions, that is the bylaw and policy before you this evening.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. I have a couple at the moment, and just in case I don't get back within the time, it's fresh in our mind now. On point 2.1, it says the township will not approve any funding requests that do not comply to this policy. And I personally would like to see that changed to may. And because we do list down further that there are times that we may, at council's discretion, not follow the policy 100%. So I would just think it would be better to say may not approve. And then the other one that I had down was 10.1. It said all proposals for a grant donation will be reviewed by the clerk and treasurer and recommended to council for final approval. I'd like to see all of them come to council, if nothing else, just so that we are aware of who's applying in the community, and I think this is something that's important to the community. So I'd like to see all of them go. I don't think there's going to be that many that's going to be overwhelming or anything. So I don't have a problem if staff goes through ahead of time and wants to make recommendations, but as councillor, I'd like to see them all come forward to us. That's my 2 comments, if anybody else agrees or not.
Those are good points, so we should discuss them. Councillor Jaworski, you might have others or want to tag on.
I agree with Deputy Mayor Lang's comments. I would like to add, actually building on one of them, that including that they've made the request, also include the application. I find the additional information in the application, I found in the past, I generally ask for it because sometimes the summary, for whatever reason, I feel like there's not enough detail. So that is one comment I'd like to make. And I think overall, though, the approach is good in that it's quite flexible, but it is asking for more detail. And I think that is something that we're looking for to ensure that these funds are more project-based or for specific purposes rather than sort of general operating funds for programming. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bougie.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would 100% agree with Councillor Jaworski that it's meant for more project funds and not, running their operations. So another comment I'd like to make is maybe clarification. Last year's budget was roughly around 60,000 for grants and donations. Am I correct in saying that? So
I think there was a number in there.
I didn't
and
see the number. That's why I was.
It was 60,000 in 2022, so it might have been 62.5 or 65 in 2023 or 4.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we budgeted 62,500, and then we also carried forward 6,000 from the previous year that had been unspent.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councilor Bougie.
Yeah, that was just my question there for clarification, really. But I mean, hopefully with this, we're not deterring anyone either, but what we were finding in the past is the same kind of organizations were requesting the maximum, right? So hopefully we'll get some projects going and we'll see some creative applications.
Okay, so I was asking a procedural question a little bit, Councillor Jaworski, while you were asking or speaking, so I apologize because in our resolution it says it passed a third time, so we can either change the resolution or defer it. I just want to go back to you because you agreed with Councillor or Deputy Mayor Lang, and then you said you enjoy that it's more project-based. Was there a change you wish to see that I may have missed? I just want to make, if you could
Sure.
summarize those two.
The comment I made was to include the applications in the package that goes to council so that we can have all the detail that was presented.
Thank you, and thank you for the re-summary, and I apologize for asking a question while you were speaking. If I may, do we want to removal of the yearly limit? I know that was brought forward last time. I believe it was Deputy Mayor Lang kind of said like to allow for a higher amount. Are we interested in that? The only history I would have there is in 2017, as Councillor Bougie remember, I think it was Canada 150, and there was a $125,000 request that year, and that's why it was brought to kind of tame it down. But I suppose like we have the ability to do that too. So I'm not opposed to it. I just wanted to like that was the reason why there was a cap put on it at one point. But it's okay to remove it because as council we can indirectly set it that that way that we just say everybody gets near $5,000. If you want more, you can ask for more. Deputy Mayor Lang.
If we leave it in, we still have the ability to work around it, I believe, do we not? We're not going against.
I think council has the ability to go above
Trying
its
to remember what
policy.
exactly the wording it was in there, but it did seem like council had some leeway in this to kind of change this on the fly a little bit. But we need to have something to kind of give people a general guideline, like we're not looking for everybody to apply for $10,000 here. We're trying to, in special circumstances, maybe we'll change our limit, but.
And if I may, because I guess I was the author of the previous one, if you don't mind me. Okay, thank you. Council always has the leeway to break there. So that was just an administrative cap that we can do this, and if you want more, you can always go to council. And that was just to allow the big ones to go to council, so we didn't make those decisions previous on the administrative side. So then, I don't think there needs to be much conversation there, because I think we can always, sorry, I guess I brought that up. Do we wish to have a cap still, or no? That'd be my question. Councillor Jaworski.
I mean, I feel that with the cap before, it was sort of leading to folks asking for the cap. So it's hard to predict what necessarily if not having a cap would change that behavior, but I think it's important to be clear on what the budget is traditionally, and that typically so many different organizations are funded, and people can do the math, I suppose, on what that means sort of on average. Then they can reflect themselves if they think they should be asking for more than the average, or I mean, I guess it gives an opportunity to sort of self-assess maybe.
Okay, excellent. So then the cap will be removed. One question I would have just procedurally is having seen grants and donations go to several councils, just over like personal experience, it can you can take a whole council meeting and take 3 hours to 5 hours. You can take a grants and donation and take anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour and a half, and it's a lot of money. Like it's a lot of time spent on 65,000, which, no disrespect, is small compared to multi-million-dollar projects. So, some consideration administratively on how to bring it to council effectively while not making our budget extraneous on those dates would be good. Like, would council be open to and I'm sorry for rambling a little bit, maybe a special meeting at a time to do this one? Because in our budget, we dedicate the amount that we're willing to dedicate and then maybe look over them, or would we prefer to have it all in the budget? Oh, yes, go ahead. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, just to sort of build on where I think you might be going with your comment there. I know, and I don't know if last year was the first time we did it, but last year, we brought a report forward to council, if I'm remembering correctly, before the budget meeting with a list, a summarized list of all of the requests received, so that you could see that before we got to our actual budget meeting. So we could also, that could also be an option for council.
That is a good point. I just, yeah, with November 29th or whatever the Friday is and our budget, we couldn't have it before, but, okay, no, that's a good point. Procedurally, we do that as we can. Okay, so looking at this, can I just change this to say first, second reading? Okay. I'm going to amend the motion to just say first and second reading. And what council wishes to discuss or look into, excuse me, while I go to the, I think it was 2.1. We wish to change shall to all requests for funding from the township shall only be considered. I guess you had mentioned may, or just remove that. All requests for funding from the township shall only be considered in accordance with this policy. You wanted some lesser wording on that.
It was the next sentence, I just thought, it says the township will not approve. I said may not approve any.
Thank you, sorry, I was focused on the wrong sentence. Is everybody okay with changing to may not approve? Excellent. And then it was 10.1. All proposals for grant and donation shall be reviewed by the clerk and the treasurer or their designates and recommended to council for final approval. Do we just scratch that line and it comes to council for approval in some form? Okay. And then if there can be some wording, if just to talk about Councillor Jaworski's point, would be on project-based. Is everybody in favor of moving? Yeah, Councillor Bougie? Okay, so just, okay, so then from direction, please, when people look to apply, say council is interested and more likely to fund project-based rather than, we'll call it base funding. Okay, I'll read that resolution again as it has changed. Moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be resolved that the staff report 2024-117 be received and that bylaw 2024-68, being a bylaw to adopt a community grants and donations policy for the Township of South Glengarry, be read a first and second time, and on this 21st day of October 2024. All those in favor? Carried. We will now move to the procedural bylaw. Moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Oh yes, comprehensive fee bylaw. Moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be resolved that staff report 2024-118 be received and that bylaw 2024-69, being a bylaw to establish fees and charges to be collected by the Township of South Glengarry, be read a first and second time this 21st day of October 2024. Ms. MacDonald.
Good evening, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So before you this evening for first and second reading is our comprehensive fee bylaw. This represents a big collaboration between all of the departments here and some hard work by summer students over the last few years. So we have sent out some of the backup research to council as well, and this evening the bylaw, as you can see, I should have noted in the report, we've also added a column showing our current fees. That of course won't be in the final product. We just wanted to make for ease of reference. And yes, so this evening we're here to discuss with council and receive your feedback and hopefully bring a completed bylaw before we return for budget.
Thank you very much. Comments on the fee schedule? Councillor Jaworski, then Deputy Mayor Lang.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Lang wanted to know, how deep did you want us to get in the discussion tonight? And part of me feels, I know we have folks in the public audience who are here to listen specifically to this item, so I do feel sort of like we should talk about it a bit.
Okay, so I'll open it to as deep as we wish to go. Naturally, there would be we can probably get back with further comments or thoughts if you have any thoughts afterwards. When would that deadline would be? Likely next Monday to get back to you, I imagine. I don't know what day it is today. It is next Monday, so October 28th would be our chance after we have these conversations, if you have any thoughts, to bring them back to administration. But we will start with Councillor Jaworski, and then Deputy Mayor Lang can take it after there for as long as he wants.
Well, I was thinking I'd go through a few of the departments, and then I can, if other ones don't get covered, if I could ask supplemental questions, Mayor, I'll come back to them. So on the corporate services, I didn't have any feedback. It seemed quite reasonable. Same thing for finance. It's all very minor, really seems minor, although I can assume that some of the actual costs are perhaps not minor, but the changes appear minor. So one thing on the fire services one, and again, this is more for the benefit also of the public who may be listening, is that on the fire services side, it does seem to be quite a change in terms of the scope of what we are going to have fees for. And I have had an exchange already with the Fire Chief Robertson about this, but again, just for the benefit of the public, certainly, Chief, I would like, if you have other comments, but I guess what I surmise from our conversations is that, this is giving us flexibility now to recoup costs from incidences that involve non-residents, as well as sort of very specialized and very high resource intensity incidences that can occur from time to time in the township. But looking forward to any other comments you have.
Sure, thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. So yes, fire services, South Glengarry Fire Service we had very few fees in the past. We do have legislation, specifically our open air burn permit and bylaw, that states that costs can be charged to a property owner if need be, but the bylaw doesn't state what those charges should be. Having this schedule will allow us to actually have a set fee that will be clear, that will be understood by all our residents. So other items, as you mentioned, items high risk or very specialized rescues or hazardous materials responses, these are types of things that, especially with our municipality being such a transportation corridor, let's say, a lot of outside agencies traveling through, it shouldn't be up to our ratepayers, our residents, to take care of these large fees when these incidences happen, and we have to respond to them. So those, in essence, that's a gist of it. I can speak to any specific ones if you'd like, but these are very common fees that municipalities, fire services across the province have within modern service fee bylaws. So, yeah, thank you.
And yes, if you'd like to add, and I would like to, once we're done with fire, we'll just make sure that corporate finance and fire are good, and then we'll go back to Councillor Jaworski.
That was my point, that Councillor Jaworski go through them, but let's deal with one at a time instead of having to all come back to the same ones.
Yes, okay, so are there any, yeah. Do you have any comments about corporate or finance, Councillor Bougie? I think Deputy Mayor Lang said he's okay. So that would be page 94 and 95. I'll just wait, I think, I don't know, if you might have notes on your computer. I personally don't, so I'm once Councillor Bougie, if you have any notes. Okay, we're good. You might be on, I think it's 94 and 95 on the new one. Okay. So then any further questions on fire from other members of council or further follow-up? Councillor Jaworski is done on fire. Anybody on that one? I didn't have any myself. Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I'm just getting back till I went back on the other agenda. Yeah, I'm quite concerned about it, to tell you the truth. It is a big change from where we were, not charging anybody for anything almost, to now having the ability to charge people for most calls. And I'm not saying that there aren't times that we maybe do need to do this, but I just don't know how, and I maybe Chief could give us a bit of his thoughts on this, how we're going to, are we going to charge, you know, like we have a ability to charge for ice water rescue, are we going to charge for all of them? Are we going to charge for a few? Or if we're going to put it in there, what is to stop us from saying we're going to charge for all? And just something so everybody's aware, when it doesn't list amounts, but it says current MTO rate per hour per truck is $560 basically, you know, give or take 11 cents. So that's $1,680 for an hour, because most stations respond with 3 vehicles. So I don't know, it just seems, I mean, for years we've gone to calls, and we've, you know, people have always worried that they're going to be charged. We said, no, your taxes are covering this. This is a service we provide, and we're happy to do it. Are we getting away from that? And that's just kind of my worry.
Go ahead, Chief of Fire.
Sure. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think the idea behind a fee bylaw is that we have the ability to bill if need be. As an example, the smoke alarm line item that's on there. Smoke alarms, the smoke alarms that we carry are quite expensive. They're ones with multiple options, and they're not just the inexpensive battery-operated smoke alarms. With that, and we don't want to carry multiple different types. So we want to carry a single type that will best utilize our resources and the fact that we need to often install them for people who are in contravention of existing provincial legislation. So at least we have a price there if we have to charge a fee for it. It's a good, the reason I bring up fire and smoke alarms is the fact that we also have items that we can donate to the public. If we so feel on an incident that our fundamental goal with the fire service is the protection of people and property. If we feel, or our responding crews feel that someone is in need, in a situation of need, then we will provide these free of charge within sort of our donation realm. So the service fee gives us the ability to charge for some of these items. It speaks specifically to some of the line items such as non-residents. It shouldn't be for our local taxpayers to have to, as I mentioned before, subsidize travelers who are using our resources and are not ratepayers within the municipality. So did I answer parts?
Yeah, I think I get where you're coming from, and I'm perfectly fine with the fact that I think yourself would be, and I apologize, it's hard to talk into the mic, and it would be nice if staff was somewhere where everybody could see each other, but anyway, I don't like people at my back, but it just, it's hard to do both, but I trust that Chief Robertson would be perfectly fair with these things, but we're putting them in here that we are going to have them. We're not going to put our fees into our recreation department and say, oh yeah, well, we're not likely going to charge them. We're going to put fees in, and there's going to be a standard that we're going to charge across the board. It seems if we're going to put them in here, is there a way to do this? And you say you're not our residents, that's fine on the 401. People are traveling through, and we have to respond, and we want to be able to recoup our cost. But if somebody from North Glengarry is driving down to 34 to Lancaster and has an accident, and we're going to send them a bill for $1,600, it seems, you know, if it can go through their insurance, maybe, you know, like, so I'm kind of torn on this one. There's some gray areas. If it's insurance, it's not a big deal, you know, if their insurance is paying it anyway, but just to start handing people bills, it just kind of goes against what I've kind of been doing for the last 20 years when I was on the fire department, was, you know, to provide that service and not so I'm kind of torn, and I don't know where everybody else is on this one.
So I think before you commented, everybody was okay with it, but I do think the level, like, it'd be how we deliver it is what you're most concerned with, because if we put it there, it can be used, and if it can be used, sometimes people, maybe perhaps not Fire Chief Dave, but Mr. Robertson, sorry. So perhaps not Mr. Robertson. However, a next person might do it with impunity. I go anecdotally to a summer student one time went against tempo shelters, and by the time that summer student returned from the office, there were 20 complaints to the village saying, hey, like, we don't do that. So sometimes if it's there, you get a new employee, perhaps they're from somewhere else, and they apply it. So that is a very good concern. Councillor Bougie.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. I mean, it was kind of a good exercise just to go through this to see how much the fire department does. Like, a lot of these additional fees that weren't there before, and to see everything that they do on a daily basis is impressive. As for the vehicles registered to non-residents, I mean, I see where you're coming from, Deputy Mayor Lang, but to me, I'm like, we should be recovering some of these costs. I mean, it's the South Glengarry tax base that pays for it, and I would be okay with us charging that fee if they're non-resident. I mean, maybe we have mutual aid agreements with Cornwall and South Stormont, so maybe if we're including SD&G in this, and if we can have an agreement with all of SD&G, maybe that can be excluded, but I don't know. I guess it's a difficult conversation either way, but I do feel like we need to recover those costs.
All right, Councillor Jaworski.
Yeah, no, it's been a really good discussion to have. So when I'm thinking of this, I always think of like examples or hypotheticals, and if I read it, and certainly if I'm reading it wrong, please correct me. But that often there's medical calls, and it doesn't appear to my reading that there would be charges for that, unless, again, if I'm reading that incorrectly, that was my kind of how I read it, and also that the motor vehicles, it charged to non-residents. But I think what Councillor Bougie there made a lot of sense is if we have mutual aid agreements, that's probably something that we need to think about maybe, or incorporate in those, or maybe have some a more regional approach, so that we're also not, I don't think we want to be completely on our own on this one either. And then there's probably benefit to having similar approaches as our neighbors. Then I'm also thinking of large structure fires, whether they be home or farm, God forbid. Again, I'm not sure, does that fall under any of these specialized responses? My original read was no, but maybe after hearing Deputy Mayor Lang, maybe I misread it. But I don't want there to be too much discretion, because again, then I thought the example of the recreation, it makes a lot of sense. Why are we going to have these fee bylaws if we're not actually charging them? And how do you determine who charges what? And obviously our fire chief is not, at some point he will want to take a retirement, and there will be someone else eventually. So we want to make sure that we have a good practice in place that doesn't make it difficult for people to exercise their judgment either. Thanks.
All right. Mr. Robertson, did you have any thoughts on, I suppose, how to have them there, but applied properly, or if Ms. MacDonald has any thoughts, or Mrs. Campo? Just because those are all fair points, in that you don't want it to be applied, because it's there. You might say, well, we have this, council wants us to charge this, when in fact it's situational. And then maybe, yeah, please, if you have any thoughts on it.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess I'll speak to a number of items. As to the regional approach, I think that is an excellent thought and well worth pursuing. I think it's sort of a bigger philosophical conversation that we would have to have regionally, and it wouldn't be something that would be able to we would be able to implement in the near future, but it is something that we want our residents to think of our area as a region, and we don't want to hinder our residents with boundaries. So yes, we can look at something like that over time. As far as, I guess if I may, the Highway Traffic Act is very clear that you cannot speed on a municipal roadway. is everyone pulled over for traveling 1 kilometer an hour over? That's not really the intent of the bigger picture, I guess. So, but it is there if it's needed. As an example, a number of years ago, we had some issues with illegal building uses, grow ops, et cetera. You know, if a building is being used illegally and the fire service or other municipal departments have to address that, or, you know, be on standby or on fire watch, should it really be up to our residents as a whole to pay that tab, or should that not be able to be billed back to the offending person or company? So the philosophy is to have these fees that we can use. I understand council's concern about when it's used and when it's not used. I freely admit we have not had a lot of these fees. These fees and non-resident vehicle responses, these are common across the province. These are common fees. When we look to do our research on this, most of these items are copied and carbon copied off of other municipalities. So the feeling was that not so much that we should be charging because everyone else is charging, but these items do affect our municipal budget. They do affect our municipal taxation. So the feeling was to bring them in and utilize them as needed. So,
In an effort not to get stuck in probably what is a very complicated answer to, yeah, it's just a very complicated thing to discuss. We'll just go to governance and say, I think as a CEO, you've heard how council feels about this, and then you're accountable to us, and Mr. Robertson's accountable to you. So as long as we have the proper culture, and in that case, if you're here and Mr. Robertson is not, and that fire chief is not doing it this way, you know what council's intent is with this. So I think that's, we can leave some of the trust in administration to administer it the way council wants. I don't know how to codify that. Maybe that can come back with something, but I think like I'd leave it to the accountability is there upwards our way. So it's been very clear that we don't want this to be punitive. We don't want this for our residents. It's for the non-residents. And in the special circumstances, 20 years of Mr. or Deputy Mayor Lang's fire experience would show that we apply common sense and rural values. So please continue that. Ms. McDonald. Yes.
Thank you. It's almost as if this is almost a little different than the other fees, and I'm okay with that, but I don't know how you make that, because, you know, like we use the example of if you're speeding, you know, that is at the discretion of the officer, and it's almost like this one category of fees is at the discretion of the fire chief, where the others are things that are across the board. Staff isn't going to, you know, discretion say, well, this hockey team came in and wanted to rent the ice, we're going to give it to them for free. The other guys have to pay their hourly rate. So it's a little different than the rest, and I would be okay with that. And I don't know if there's a way to work that in there, that it is, you know, it's there that if we need it, but it's not used all the time. I'd be fine with that, I think. And then if it kind of gets out of hand, then council could step in and say, you know, we want this to go in a different direction. But it's not going to be the same as the other fees. Then if you're you know, you're having an officer that's going to, at his discretion, decide when it's going to be used and not.
Okay, we'll go Ms. McDonald, and then I have a question just of Mrs. Campo. Ms. McDonald?
Excuse me, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to say that this bylaw is something we'll be bringing back to council, so it's certainly something we can review and how the practice is going. Like, ideally, we'd bring this back next August or September for a review of the fees, and if at that time council maybe wants to provide the feedback, or any time before, we can make changes. And it's very much going to be a sort of a living document in that it's going to be not set in stone forever. This is sort of round one, and if we decide it's not something we want to continue or areas we want to change, then it's very easy to do so.
Yes. No, that is an excellent point. And also just the question to you, or maybe a comment would be, or the two of you, as we develop this, would be, I agree with Deputy Mayor Lang, and I just get a nod of, like, oh, goodness. Would it be like a show of thumbs up that kind of this schedule may be at the discretion more so than the others? Because I do like the way you had said that, because it is slightly different than the other schedules. Is that something we'd like to look at, and if we can, how to write that in, or just know that?
Oh, I think you need to write it in somehow, but I'm thinking language around like it's deterrent-based or it's for, multiple, like for the ones that are not the non-residents, but like multiple offenders, that kind of thing, that kind of wording.
Okay, we'll do some research then. Yep, okay. Look forward to that portion coming back. Any further questions on fire? And thank you, Deputy Mayor Lang, for bringing up that point, because otherwise that one would have just quickly skated. So now moving to planning, and since Councillor Jaworski has volunteered to go first for all of these, Councillor Jaworski.
I was thinking, because we got some additional detail on the planning one, that there might have been a presentation that came with the planning piece, but is there?
Sorry, and I will speak to that. So the presentation you received was actually prepared last year and was updated with one of the newer bylaws. We'd sort of initially planned this as more of a committee of a whole discussion, I believe almost a year ago. So I shared that and that it was quite thorough. But I should add that some of the fees in the comparatives have actually been updated since then. Fee bylaws are the kind of thing that you're constantly being asked by your neighbors, may I see your most recent fee bylaw, or looking for examples. So those fees for a couple of municipalities have been updated since that presentation.
Yeah, so thank you for that. I mean, I remember having the discussion about planning fees and how, it'll be interesting to hear what my colleagues say. I mean, I think if we're in line, it's not necessarily, I mean, this isn't like a market value thing to me. To me, this is a fee for service, ensuring that, for these projects, they're often associated with projects, that it's borne by the person taking on the project, particularly when we're talking about like developments and subdivisions, perhaps for, like the smaller site renovations, but that could be maybe lower, but I'm not even sure if that's possible to do that sort of thing within these descriptors. But again, I think, our staff, we see Ms. Haley giving us very thorough reports, large reports, the Committee of Adjustment. There's a lot of work that goes behind this, so I do think we need to try and cover the costs associated with, but certainly I think full cost recovery on the larger, on the developers, on the subdivisions, that sort of thing. The one I did have a question about, because I was curious on what the rationale was, or if there was a specific rationale, was on the temporary use zoning bylaw, and why that one jumped more significantly, I guess, than the rest.
Mrs. Haley?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the question, Councillor Jaworski. And that's a really good one for you to pull, and I can give you a really detailed answer. So under the Ontario Planning Act, it dictates how we process planning applications. Temporary use application is very similar to a zoning change. It just has a different result at the end if it's approved. A temporary use application requires us to still notify the public the same way as a zoning amendment, whereby we are required to put an ad in the newspaper. Our current fee is $500, and if I remember correctly, our last newspaper fee was $464. So we haven't even started to begin to cover staff time, let alone our advertisement costs, mail-outs, things like that. So that one would jump the most out of all of our planning fees. And we only get maybe 1 to 2 temporary use applications a year. They're not a common process. So, but one thing to keep in mind, when someone's asking for a temporary use, it means they're going entirely against the bylaw, and it's a chance for us to determine if this use operating temporarily has a negative or positive impact or not. So it's still important to have that public consultation. Thank you.
And just to be sure, when was the last time we updated our planning fees? Just to make sure, to give some idea of where these numbers came from and where they are now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we did a comprehensive fee bylaw review in 2009 with one amendment after that. And that amendment after that, the only change that I recall, if I remember correctly, is adding the fee for telecommunication towers. I had completed 2 other presentations to council, the most recent one being 2019, where I didn't get support to increase the fees. And that's probably why some of our fees are so low compared to some of the other municipalities, because of the time that has surpassed. I would like to add one more quick comment, if you don't mind. I learned from one of our neighboring municipalities who had completed a comprehensive fee bylaw review and retained a professional independent firm to do it. Their planning fees came back at thousands of dollars per application, and their council chose to a fee that they felt was more of a reasonable amount, and also looked at the neighbors. So if we were to cover our costs for all of our fees based on that study that I had reviewed, they were thousands of dollars. Like, people might not pursue an application at all. And so we are being competitive, but not necessarily recovering all of our costs.
No, that's a fair point. Councillor Bougie?
Through Mr. Mayor, thank you for that, Ms. Haley, because, I mean, to me, I mean, I feel like if it has been that long, then that's probably why we're seeing such a jump. And to me, these projects in the planning department should be the applicant that pays, not the township. So it should be near full cost recovery to me. But I'm in favor of these changes.
Thank you. And if this was intended to be slightly more like committee of the whole, I know sometimes financially I talk a little bit more, and I'm supposed to be a chair. Is it all right if I? So I have a similar thought as Councillor Jaworski and Councillor Bougie, in that I am a pay-to-play person, and that I don't want our current residents paying for people to come here. It's like in poker, you don't just walk up the table and get chips; you pay for those chips. So as close we can, and then. To cost recovery is great, and I look forward to this coming back consistently, because then we can have those conversations and we can look at it and say, so are we running it at a discount of 20% or something like that, and we can set that as a council decision, and it makes it easier. So I'm thankful for this update, and yeah, 15 years is quite amount of time. So are there further questions on planning? Okay, Councillor Jaworski, take us to infrastructure, page 99.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With my pleasure. This one, I actually have just a comment, but it's on a small item, but it's one that I perhaps have an outsized interest in, and it comes to the landfill registration fees. And so we currently require residents to register their vehicles or their trailers that they use to go to the landfill. And I'm of the now that we have gone to 2 free dump opportunities for residents for like a standard residential amount, and we don't have the dump days, I don't necessarily see the value in requiring residents to do this anymore. I see definitely, I think from maybe a commercial standpoint, from commercial users, we should have this information. But I feel like, there might be a better way at reducing, you see people going into the office to do it, and then they go to the landfill. Does that deter someone? They show up at the landfill and they have to register and they go, forget about it, and then they drive away and dump everything in the ditch. Like, how can we make it as easy for residents as possible to use the landfill? So that's my outsized interest in landfill operations.
Okay, do you want that answered, or I guess that's like a grease or a gunk, right? Like, how can we grease it to be easier as opposed to making it hard for people to do? Ms. McDonald, do you have a thought to that, or would you like to come back with thoughts? Okay, excellent. We'll have some of that answered. Councillor Bougie, I think Deputy Mayor Lang also wanted to speak, so go in that order.
Through Mr. Mayor, I mean, for that fee, I don't feel like it's a huge deal. I mean, I showed up at the landfill this year, and they rolled my plate down, and it was pretty seamless, pretty quick. So it wasn't didn't deter me at all. And I mean, the fact that you can do it right at the landfill now, like that's a win-win. One item I was kind of looking at was the ozone depleting substance units. The current fee is 20. Like, do we actually do that? Like, are they talking about units like refrigerators and things like that? So our staff actually does that, or do we have someone else do it? Because $25 before seemed like nothing, and $150 is probably what it actually costs. So I'm assuming that's cost recovery.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. We actually didn't charge a fee for taking, it was on like a fridge without the Freon, with the Freon still in, we would just take it. So we introduced this $25 fee recently, and it just wasn't, when we brought in the gentleman to decommission a batch of fridges, the cost was astronomical. So this is either we turn these people away and say, we will not take your fridge, or we charge them a fee and it's cost recovery. It's likely the same fee that they would have to have the gentleman or the lady come to their house and decommission their, excuse me, their white goods.
Is that a fee you wish to discuss, or just you're looking for the context? Okay. Deputy Mayor Lang?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I got to get a couple of freezers up there quick then before we change that fee. No, I agree with that. Unless it has the sticker saying that it's been professionally decommissioned, it's going to cost us a lot more than $25 to deal with it, so we better charge that. As far as the registration fee that Councillor Dworsky was talking about, I mean, $20 isn't terrible, but I don't see a problem leaving it at 10. It should be something, because it takes a bit of time to fill it out and for us to get it in the system, I'm sure. My question on it is under Schedule F for the tipping fees. A couple of points there. One, we have down single axle utility trailer and a double axle utility trailer, and then 1-ton truck, a hay wagon, etc. I don't see a thing like a utility trailer. I have a small utility trailer, single axle, that we have double as well. Pulled behind the pickup truck. You couldn't get near as much on it as you could on a hay wagon. But there are those hydraulic dump trailers that a lot of the contractors have that are pulling behind their pickup, which likely hold considerably more than a 1-ton truck or a hay wagon. And I don't know, do we have a spot for those? Because a lot of the guys that are hauling industrial or commercial or even renovation waste are all using those. And they hold a considerable amount. Like my brother Will's got one that I can put our whole skid steer in it. It holds 10 tons. Like it's a considerable trailer. So I just wonder if we should have a heading for those things, and it definitely needs to be up, I would say, in the $100 range. And what's brought this up is in the last month and a half, I've had two people, one person called me 3 times and the other person once, saying that they had followed one of these trailers out from the city of Cornwall full of waste, you know, like 2x4s and garbage bags and so forth, driving from City of Cornwall into South Glengarry. They didn't follow them all the way, but at last seen, we're heading up north on Somerstown Road. So I'm thinking, why would you drive out of Cornwall with a load of waste if you weren't intending to take it to our landfill, likely? And I'm curious, I think our tipping fees need to match Cornwall's likely at some point. I'm wondering if we might be considerably less, or because we don't have those dump trailers in there, they're getting through and so that's at least 4 loads that we know of that came into South Glengarry. Maybe the guy just took them home for the night and then went back to Cornwall, but highly unlikely. So just something to think about. Are our fees matching with Cornwall's? And we didn't have a fee thing that was from Cornwall, so I don't know what their tipping fees are. And can we capture those dump trailers that hold a pile of stuff?
Would other councillors be amenable to that? Yeah. Okay, so we can add that language for another truck or do some research on it, and if not, then come back with a good reason, and then look to Cornwall's as a comparable. So nothing under Schedule E for you, Deputy Mayor Lang? That's you didn't have anything under Schedule E. You went to F, so we were good to move to F.
The only thing under E was I could support Stephanie in keeping the registration fee down.
So then maybe is there a value to having registration? You're saying registration at all, or okay? I'd be curious to an answer perhaps for that at some point, because maybe there's an administrative burden that we're less aware of, but if there's no registration required, just take that down as maybe a comment in the next report. Councillor Bougie?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, but with landfill registration, isn't that how we track for the 2 free dumps? Is that not the same way to do it? When you register your vehicle, it's on the vehicle, so you have your 2 free dumps?
I'm unsure.
Like, how does that, what's the process?
Yeah, I suppose this is a Ms. McDonald question, so if you could please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the two free jump days, we just have a binder at our landfill, and whenever we see the ID, we check off 1 and 2 each year, and there's a number of columns, so we use the same book for a number of years.
Do you do it by ID or like your home address, so it doesn't matter the vehicle? Okay,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
all right.
So maybe some thoughts on registration for the next one and why we do it if we need to. It's because if it's a process we can eliminate, it probably saves some time, some staff time too, which that's valuable as well. Deputy Mayor Lang?
Maybe the registration thing's a good idea, and we, the vehicle, I don't know, it's just, you could easily go under and give a different address if you wanted, if you knew a neighbor that absolutely had no way of ever getting to the dump, and you get another 2 days. I don't know if we have people trying to do this or not. It seems like a lot of bother, but.
Okay, well, right now we're ambivalent on whether it's $20 or $0. We'll make a decision at the third and final reading. Just maybe have a comment ready for us to justify or give some context to that particular point. Moving to Schedule G, Parks, Recreation, and Culture. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor McDonald. Leaving the best for last, I think, and the folks who are here listening in, probably the part that's more interesting to them. So sorry for the suspense. So first of all, I wanted to thank staff. Thank staff for all of this work, but also I know Ms. Harbers has been, looking at this for some time, and I know that she's exchanged with user groups, and we had feedback from user groups thanking us. Thanking the work that was done and the prior notice. And I think it's not a surprise that there was going to be an increase to the recreation fees. And thank you also to staff for the comparables that came through that, were of comparable facilities. Weren't comparing us to Cornwall, which is not a comparable facility. So I think that was a good thing. And I think it's also important to note, like we were talking about planning and, the fees, there's significant fees that come in through planning, but through recreation, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars as well. So, and this is, dollars that impact residents regularly, whereas planning might be more of a one-time or, every couple of years kind of fee. So it's, I appreciate the care and consideration that was done on this one. So I think there's a couple of new things, like having the within 24 hours rental. I think it's really, as I understand that, that's to be able to maximize use of the ice surface. When there are gaps, I know some other facilities have that, and it's, if we have the facility here and it's, it costs us money to have the ice in, I think the more we can get folks to use it, this is a way that helps us fill in any gaps. I think that's really excellent. I'm a little unsure about the removal of the Optimus Club. So the Optimus Club typically sponsors like 30 hours, I believe it is, of ice rentals for the three, like for Charland, WPS, and Iona. And so if this would be, a bigger increase on that organization and how they've typically sponsored. So, but by the same token, it is not outside of the range of the other fees, but still, I think folks know I have a soft spot for schools and us partnering with schools, so that I'd like to hear my colleagues' feedback on that one in particular, if they feel that one makes sense. I do have 2 questions, specifically the lobby television ads. I wanted to clarify that that's the ads that are on the board that gives the change room allocations. And then my other question, actually, I'm sorry, I actually have 2 other questions. One is about the Martintown Good Timers, if Ms. Harbers could refresh us on what that particular fee entails or covers. And then lastly, and it's if staff doesn't have the answers for all of this tonight, that's no problem. I wasn't able to get these in ahead of time. But the program fees specific to like minor soccer and baseball and ball hockey, historically, some of those programs were very volunteer-led, and I'm just wondering in terms of like the program fees and how those are being determined moving forward and working with those groups. That's probably something maybe for a larger discussion as well. Thank you.
Ms. Harbers, do you have any answers now, or would you like to come back? Okay, Ms. Harbers?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I'll try to remember the questions. The TV ads, you are correct. It is the small banner at the bottom of the dressing room board. That's those ads. Technically, the fee right now is not in our fees bylaw, but it is, like, we don't have it in the fees bylaw, but for those ads that are up there currently, it's $50 per year. The other question, the Martintown Good Timers out of the Martintown Community Center, that fee covers any rental that they have. They have multiple rentals per week, you know, pickleball a couple times a week, shuffleboard, cards, exercise, that type of thing. So this $1,000 a year is for any of those rentals. Sorry, was there another question? Yes, so, sorry, so the minor sport rental fee, they just obviously haven't been increased in many years. $40 for soccer registration for a 10-week program is quite low compared to everywhere else. It was hard to get comparables because a lot of municipalities don't run the program. It depends on if there's a proper association to do that. However, we do run the program, and you know, at $40 a session or a season is quite low, so that's why we brought it up to 60, which is still lower than a neighboring municipality that runs the program.
No, thank you for those clarifications. Like I said, in the past, you know, it was more, I mean, certainly the soccer and the T-ball, at least the soccer here, maybe not Glen Walter, where there's more sort of volunteer led. But so if I understand correctly now, these ones are like fully run by the township now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, they are all run through the township. Obviously, volunteers volunteer to coach and, you know, help make teams and that sort of thing. But the municipality carries the cost for the registration software that is used. We register everybody, admin, you know, any questions about the program. We're doing a lot of that admin work and purchasing anything that's required for those programs as well.
Councillor Bougie?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and I mean, I can attest to the minor soccer, at least, that my son played in and I coached, and $40 for 10 sessions is pretty cheap, and they end up getting their jersey, their shorts, their socks, and a soccer ball. So that alone, I mean, I'm sure Tim Hortons helps with that, but I mean, it's a great deal either way. The one I was kind of eerie on, I mean, I know in the past, when council had looked at rates for ice, and we hadn't looked at them in many, many years, then we increased it, and it was kind of backlash, but even at the time, it was, you know, we were just bringing it up just a bit. This, to me, I know when, like, you had comparables as well, but $40 an hour for primetime ice it seems like a pretty big jump in 1 year, and I don't know, you know, yeah, you see 1 hour, but some of these groups are multiple hours. So, like, this is a huge hit, like 20% increase. So, I mean, I know we got a letter earlier, but I don't know if we could phase this in a little bit more, like even going to 180, then 200 over 2 years. Just kind of cut that increase in half and phase it over 2 years, just to kind of lower the burden on some of these groups. Because, I mean, they're going to have to pass that cost on to the residents, really.
Ms. McDonald has a comment.
So on this one, I might apologize. The $200 per hour you see for prime time, that's including the HST, and the current fee of 160 plus HST, it's a little over 180. So it's not as big a jump. It is still a jump, but it's with the taxes in, it's not as bad.
And I guess my standard question would be, when was the last time these rates were raised? And I'm sorry if just to make sure we have that publicly.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the current fees bylaw for ice rates was established in 2012, which then had a phased-in approach of 2012, 13, 14, 15. So the rates technically right now are from 2015, but the bylaw was created in 2012.
So just for administration as a whole, this will be coming back annually, I hope, or much more frequently, just so we can keep on top of these? Yes, okay, good, that'd be wonderful. My thoughts on any of these is, again, pay to pollute, pay to play, but we can always apply a discount. So anytime these come up, like say a future one, because it's a lot of effort to go through, it'd be interesting to see how much the arena costs us, right? So say that recreation programs bring in 300,000, it costs us 800,000, we're essentially giving $500,000 discount to the users, which is perfectly fine as long as council knows it. Because like maybe we say, well, that's a little too much. 5% of our taxation is going towards people who are able to play. It can go to roads, et cetera, maybe increase user groups. That would make me more comfortable, but given that these are from 2015 numbers, I have really no concerns up and down the board. I will fully admit that I did some research, and that sponsored public skate idea does come from South Stormont, so I thank Ms. Harbers for including it, because it was an interesting idea, because if we have some empty times, maybe somebody could sponsor it, because they're free skates anyway, and we can always keep them free skate, but I think, was there 3 in South Stormont that have that? And sorry that I push that on you, right?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, there's a couple public skate sessions, the more popular ones on the weekends in South Stormont that are sponsored, because then there's like a board in the lobby and it's more advertised. It's a more popular skate. So then whoever is sponsoring it, that business has then their ad displayed for anyone that's going to skate.
Well, that'd be an excellent PR move for Langmuir Farm someday, maybe the Friday skate 3 to 5. So I didn't have much to add to this. Yes, can I come to you in a second? Because Councillor Jaworski had mentioned Optimist moving from 28 to 80. I don't want to forget that one, so we'll circle back to that. And I would like to talk about Martintown Good Timers after that would be the one question. So Deputy Mayor Lang, and then we'll come back to those. And then if anybody has any questions that we want to talk about, we'll go back to them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and those are the 2 that I wanted to talk about. I wanted to know, the Optimist, we're removing it, they were paying $28. What rate are they actually going to be going to? Is it the school rate? Is it the training ice? So what rate would they be going to for the ones they book? And you might as well do that one first.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the Optimist Club rate, right now, a lot of the times the rental is, as Councillor Jaworski mentioned, is for the schools to rent. And then it's through the Optimist Club, so the school pays a lower fee. So that would technically be the school rate. They would be bumped to the $90 per hour rate for that one.
All right, thank you. And the other one was for the Good Timers, and I know they're a very active group, and I think that's great to have an active group using our facility. But you're saying they're in there a couple of times a week? Is that twice a week or 3 times a week? If they're in there twice a week, they're paying $10 every time, which is, as long as they realize that, and hopefully well, sometimes I'm not sure that they are helping out as much as maybe they could. Anyway, I just would like to think that they realize what a deal they're getting. I don't know if $1,000 is quite enough myself.
So just so you don't jump on that one just by yourself, I was thinking the same thing, and they might be in there multiple times a day perhaps, so it might not be just 2 times a week. So I'll let Ms. Harper's, what would like an average range, say, per week that they are in those facilities?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thanks to some research from Kayla in the audience here, who's our temporary rec facilitator, she pulled together some numbers, and the Good Timers are renting around 34 hours a week for their programming. So it's most of the day, Monday to Friday, for programming at this time.
The full-time opportunity. Just something to think about. And I know it's maybe not politically comfortable to talk about, but I'm glad that you brought that up. Thank you.
That's pennies an hour, if that'd be likely high.
Yeah, if your average work week was 35, 1,820 is your average 35-hour work week. So it is, 50, slightly over 50 cents an hour. Councillor Jaworski.
Just one on that specific one, if I may, because that's the charge for the rental, but then also there's the mobilization of staff, right, required for some of these rentals as well. So, and I'm not, again, jumping on it, but I think awareness is the first place to start. Sort of what is the value? What are the additional costs that are being incurred? I think that's really important to understand, because perhaps there's a different model that would be more advantageous in this particular case. So I don't know if maybe Ms. Harbers, I don't know if you could maybe speak at a high level in terms of like mobilization that's required from the staff to support those 34 hours?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Some of the programs are simple where the Good Timers will do their own setup with pickleball nets, those sorts of things. However, there are some rentals like shuffleboard where they're not able to set up their own board, and our guys are going in, our facility operators are going in to do that setup and then also the cleanup afterwards. So it's not every rental that they're back and forth. However, there is the cleanup after every rental, or our staff are there at least once a day doing that type of cleaning just because of it's a busier hall than even up here. So yeah, I don't have exact hours of how many hours are spent there, but it's definitely our highest use site. And some programs require a setup, and other ones they can do that themselves.
May I just, because I just like to run numbers, so just to quantify it, right? So you have, renting for the day is benefits them, right? Because then they're not paying for hours, so that's $100 a day times 5 days a week, times, let's say, 45 weeks. So we're talking $22,000 of rental fees plus all the things charged $1,000. Now, we are an age-friendly community, and we are allowed to give discounts. It's just we sometimes should be made aware of how much those discounts or subsidies are given. And so we're not, we're discussing it, and because I feel like this could be something that gets quoted, we're discussing it, and maybe we'll increase it, but it's just sometimes important to know what kind of discount. And that comes back to like the ice rental is kind of like, it's nice to know how much taxation is discounting user groups. Councillor Bougie.
No, I through you, Mr. Mayor, I totally agree, just to see the cost, because I mean, if it's pennies on the dollar here, or pennies per hour, and I mean, we're not even increasing it. I think we need to look at this again, and kind of like, as Councillor Jaworski said, like what's being done, who's using what, how many hours, because to me, it seems like they're getting a great deal, and I'm sure anyone in the township would like to use that building for pennies on the dollar per hour. So, yeah, I think we just need to relook at this and get all the information to make a decision on this one.
Probably have to declare a conflict of interest, but I know the South Glengarry Pipe Band would love to practice there too. But the time's not available. To say on this one, oh, Councillor Jaworski?
Promise will be the last one. I wanted to re-up like what you had said earlier about understanding the cost to run like the arena. And I know when rec director 1 or 2 ago had brought like the fees that, that was one of the requests I'd had at that time, because the fees were much more dramatic. The proposal was much more dramatic increase than this, and it was like we didn't even have a good sense of what it cost us to run the arena. I know it's very difficult, and I don't expect that they could come, staff could come back with like, absolutely perfect, but I think if we had a better sense of what it costs us to, to offer, and, also the cost of September versus April, how much more expensive it is to run our facilities at certain times of the year. I think that would be helpful, and it might inform us too on how to maximize the utilization of the facility. So I just wanted to re-highlight what you had already said.
No, and that's, I would be like fully transparent, okay approving these as they are and having that info. Like this would be like the start, this is good, and then next year we might come back, because that's going to be, we're going into, yeah. Well, I'm sure they're very reasonable to say. It's just nice to know like how much of a subsidy, because we're allowed to give as much as we want. But so that can be something that we build on, because going into budget, it might not be the time to like grind through those numbers as we're trying to prepare for 2025. But I'd say 2025's return to us, it would be very nice to have that information, and probably well in advance, just to make those informed decisions. I saw your hand up, Ms. MacDonald.
Just through you, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, would you like us to strike the fee that's listed here for the Martintown Good Timers and perhaps put language like per agreement, if you'd like us to revisit it with the group, or are you happy leaving it as is for this schedule?
That's a good question. If I might, because I think 2,000 would be a reasonable spot to start, and then really look into it, because as I think that's 10%, so we're subsidizing 90% at that point, a little over. We might want to go higher, but I'd like $5,000 a year wouldn't be unrealistic for me to start, but it would be a lot to them and have to be communicated properly. And I'm sure I'll receive comments about that, but not at the expense of 13,000 people. I'm okay receiving those comments. Does anybody have an idea of where they want to start, or would we just want to do 1,000 for now and come back to this? Councillor Jaworski.
I like our treasurer's approach of per the agreement, because then I think it allows, I don't think it's, even if it's, they're charging pennies, if they're paying pennies today, I don't like the idea of upping it a very significant amount. I mean, I know there's been a lot more notice provided for other user groups, so I think per the agreement and then start having the conversation, because again, I think it's I think if we're going to talk about being, have a clear understanding of what things cost, this is a perfect one to start with, because I gather it would be much simpler than trying to figure out what the arena costs per to run. So use that as a pilot to try and get better sense.
And you can never, I don't have any malice towards somebody using an agreement that is beneficial to them. I would love those agreements myself. So then Martintown Good Timers will maintain it per the agreement, and then we'll have some research. Language per the agreement. Okay, so if that one specifically could come back maybe before, again, there's a right thing to do and a right way to do it, so please communicate and give some lead time, so if there are changes, that membership can absorb them reasonably, and then for the whole thing for 2025, if we can try to have that subsidy, or subsidy, whatever you want to call it, I'll just use subsidy for now, that amount for like the arena, et cetera. We can get that built in. And then so that's Good Timers for now. The last one was Optimus Club going from $28 to $90. I suppose in some sense we're already subsidizing $172 for that particular ice time, so we've been pretty good too. Any discussion on that? Because I think Councillor Jaworski wanted to bring that one back. Councillor Bougie.
Through Mr. Mayor, so, I mean, what is it, $35 to $90, I guess, with the HST? That one got me. One has HST plus HST, but anyways, I feel like I'm okay with the school rate moving forward.
So
Kinda
school
be
rate.
consistent and, yeah.
Okay, school rate at $90. Okay, perfect. That one's okay. So that's then the discussion. I think in full. Everybody's been heard, and nobody feels like they haven't been heard enough. Okay, thank you. So that's the first and second reading. We'll come back next meeting with the third and final. Moved by Councillor Jaworski. I'll just read it because we've been speaking for some time. Seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be resolved that Staff Report 2024-111 be received and that Bylaw 2024-69, being a bylaw to establish fees and charges to be collected in the Township of South Glengarry, be read a first and second time this 21st day of October 2024. All those in favor? Carried. And a gentle reminder that next Monday, if you have any further comments after these, please get them to administration. Moving to procedural bylaw. Moved by Councillor Bougie, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that Staff Report 2024-119 be received and that Bylaw 2024-70, being a bylaw to govern the calling, place, and proceedings of council, be read a first and second time this 21st day of October 2024. Mrs. Campo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Council will recall at our October 7th meeting, administration brought forward an information report seeking feedback from council on several proposed amendments to the procedural bylaw. So the bylaw that's before you this evening incorporates the feedback that was received at our previous meeting. I did not receive any additional comments following the meeting by email. So it's before you tonight for a first and second reading. Subject to any comments or feedback tonight, it will come back at the next meeting for a third and final.
All right, that was highlighted the changes, so it was pretty clear. I see Councillor Jaworski is having her hand up. Please proceed.
Thank you, through you, Mayor McDonald. First of all, thank you, Ms. Campo, for highlighting the changes. That makes things so much easier. In terms of the recording of meetings, in terms of how it's written, I understand that there was consensus to remove the live streaming, but I felt that there was still support for the, best efforts to record and post. And I'm just not sure if that, unless I missed a section where, I don't get that vibe anymore from how it's written now. So I don't know if it's if the language can be slightly adjusted, or, because again, I think that was the will of council. Okay, thank you.
It certainly was, so can we just look at that language and look if we can make it a little more clean, or maybe simple language would be the word, so that it's certainly the intention of council to continue recording. Oh, go ahead. We'll go Mrs. Campo and then to Deputy Mayor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to be absolutely certain, so section 8.1 says all meetings with a quorum of members may be audio and or visually recorded by the township. Do you want something in it like more in depth than that? Oh, okay, yeah, I can add a provision that when a meeting is recorded, that it'll be posted to our YouTube channel, certainly.
Would that satisfy you, or are you looking for shall in that 8.1?
So yes, the shall is in there, sorry, in 3, Mr. Mayor. So I'm thinking, for example, committee meetings, committee of the whole, where we have meetings outside of Tartan Hall, where we don't have our recording equipment. So what, if we were to include that a shall record, then we'd be stuck in a situation where our only other option outside of Tartan Hall would be an electronic meeting, unless, we figured out a method for recording in another way, which certainly I'm sure there's an ability to, but by having may record, it just gives us the flexibility for situations where we don't have our recording equipment accessible. Now, we did talk about moving to a permanent council chambers. At that time, once we've established that and we're in there permanently, we can certainly revise to say that we shall. My intent with keeping it a little more broad there was that it would allow us the flexibility for meetings outside of our regular meetings that are not held in Tartan Hall.
The strategic plan's an example of that. Say that we're but I think like an 8.2 saying that we will post and record just to have that codified. Deputy Mayor Lang.
Ms. Campo answered it, and that's what I was kind of hoping, that, because we're talking the 2 summer meetings that we may not be able to be here because the Boys and Girls Club. We don't want to have to try to transfer all this, these cameras and stuff. It'd be a nightmare to try to set up somewhere. So it gives us the option that we don't have to record if there's those circumstances, but I think that it is kind of implied that we will record when we can.
We can always go back to that, but I think I lost that one 4-1, so I'm glad to record. Yeah, we can always, but I like it. We have I shouldn't have said that, sorry. That's the will of council. I always say that, so we're doing it. I'm just want to say I'm very happy for the board and committee updates. It just allows us to communicate a little bit more about what we're doing or what we're not doing. And was it notice of motion or key information report? I also like that if administration feels there's something that perhaps, I guess myself or the CAO, if the mayor's saying don't put it on and staff fills it, I think that's the perfect spot for it. Like, in that it allows stuff to come up sometimes, and that can be level of service comments. So I really liked, I think this is a very functional changes. So thank you very much for those. That's all it's just a thank you. Any other comments? Okay. All those in favor of the motion is read. Carried. And I guess we had, this will be our second chance to change it, to have any comments. So the 28th, if you have any last comments, please bring them. Consent agenda, we are going to go to 10A, Q3 department reports. I'm assuming most of these were pulled by Councillor Jaworski or Deputy Mayor Lang. Or Councillor Bougie. Oh, sorry. That was rude of me. I shouldn't have assumed. So the Q3 is Councillor Bougie? All 3 of them? Oh, goodness. Okay. Councillor, yeah, look at that. Underestimated you. I apologize.
You know what happens when you assume, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so, I mean, I really appreciate staff's time putting the reports together, the quarterly reports, and love the layout, very functional, like lots of visuals, which I love to see. I always like reviewing the YouTube stats to see kind of where their viewership is coming from and what kind of item, and so opening of tender, I guess, was the biggest, 24 seconds. I did have a question as to, we had about 1.7 thousand views. I don't know at what point YouTube provides money back to the user.
I think it's 1,000 subscribers, and there's a number of videos or hours, so I imagine we don't have 1,000 subscribers.
Okay.
But it'd be nice to monetize.
Well, I mean, we keep promoting it through the township. We have, 15,000 people, so if we all subscribe, we might get a little kickback there, so. Facebook stats, I mean, almost 23,000 for the unveiling of the community murals, which was excellent. The question I had in, where was it? There was one question about, believe it was the facility for the elevator here. Is there delay due to equipment supply? Is there an issue, or it's still functional, just we kind of on standstill at the moment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the equipment that was supposed to be replaced in the elevator is still functional, and that's fine. But the piece of equipment that was going to be replaced, the equipment is essentially like outdated, and now we're going to be moving to a different brand of equipment. So if we were to install the piece of equipment that they had originally recommended, if we needed any parts replaced or whatever, we wouldn't necessarily be able to get those parts. So we'd be back in the same situation that we're in right now. So our supplier and maintenance contractor had recommended that we revisit the piece that we are replacing and look at it as a whole. This will likely be brought back at budget for 2025 to carry this item forward, as well as the other upgrades that need to come forward. I'm sorry if that's a bit confusing, but that's kind of the gist of it, of what I got from our maintenance contractor last week.
And just a couple other things. I mean, I appreciate the picture with the grader. Goodbye to our champion grader. I mean, it did serve us well with all our granular roads. And what really impressed me was the staffing allocation, the pie chart, to see kind of where staff time's being used. So a lot of winter plowing, loose top maintenance, hard top maintenance. So that to me was a nice visual. And that was it. So I just really appreciate the report here. Very easy to read, and I think the residents would appreciate seeing that as well.
So are there any other comments? I do have a few on it, if you'll allow. Yep. So I enjoyed that our bylaw complaints are going down. That was just wonderful to see. I think it's 94 versus 150. So I don't know if that's circumstantial, but I'm happy to see less complaints, which means we might be getting to some of them earlier. I am grateful that the building department seems to have brought in more money than anticipated, which is great for development and increased taxation, and also for me, because I think I advocated to increase that amount in the budget in 2024. So that's I'm glad it didn't come under there. Thank you for decreasing taxes continually. I liked also the map that showed where the complaints came from. I found that kind of handy, just as a nice to look to. And my question would be to administration, since this is the second, I believe, moving to quarterly. I find this quite more valuable than the previous monthly sheets. Is it? I find it very worth the time, but I don't know if we've asked you to do, 12 times the work, or if it's reasonable. So I'm just curious, this is, I very much appreciate it. I just want to make sure that we haven't burned you with 2 extra weeks reporting. So it's I'm hoping that the decreased frequency makes up for the higher quality of work. So
I guess through you, Mr. Mayor, since I wasn't around previously to the past versions of it, all I can say is that I have not heard any complaints from staff or concerns about the time commitments required to produce a report. And I believe it was, we had a meeting perhaps a week and a bit ago, and staff were able to put this information together within that, find time within that last week and a half or so to put the report together. So I think it's working well.
No, it's a clean report, and it's how we communicate to the public, right? And we're accountable to the public, so this document helps us with that. Councillor Bougie, nobody else has questions? Household Hazardous Waste Day?
Thank you, and through Mr. Mayor, I mean, a very important day in the township. We diverted quite a bit from the landfill here. Just had a question to Ms. McDonald as to how she felt it went, that the attendance was down a little bit, but, I mean, at the fairgrounds, it was a little more space, so how did things work out in your opinion?
Excellent question, Councillor Bourget. And through you, Mr. Mayor, I actually wasn't there, but I believe Deputy Mayor Lang and Mayor McDonald were both there, so they might have a few comments. But all reports from my staff said that the new location flowed more smoothly. We didn't have queuing on the Canny Road with 2 potential lanes coming in. We were able to push people through faster. The lineup was nothing compared to previous years, and everyone felt that everything was moving, even though we did feel that it was less attended than before, and some of that could just be impacts of COVID. So coming out of COVID, everybody brought their stuff, and now we're going back to more normal amount of usage.
I'll go to Deputy Mayor Lang in a second, because he conducted a wonderful straw poll, which I appreciate. I had been there the previous year, and I think the queuing was about 50 minutes, and it really never lessened until like 11:30, and then you just see like 50 minutes, 45 minutes. I don't think anybody really queued even at the start, and some people were there waiting an hour before because they didn't want to wait for 50 minutes, which is an interesting mathematics to me. However, I don't think it queued more than 20 minutes, even at the start at the front, and once the queue was gone, it was less than 5 minutes. But I'll push it to Deputy Mayor Lang, and then I think Councillor Jaworski has a comment, but if you could give your straw poll, because I really appreciated that you asked that question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Yeah, I would say that the people that waited the longest were the ones that were there before it started. And it'd be lucky if only a few people maybe waited 20 minutes, but most of the time it was drive up, and the length of time it took them to kind of get their name and address and this sort of thing, and then they were moving through the line. So I thought it went excellent. Location was excellent, lots of room, like nobody was out on the road and the mayor and I acted as kind of like Walmart greeters, and we got to say hi to everybody on the way through, and it was quite an enjoyable morning. It was, we got to have a little chat with everybody. So I asked most people, maybe didn't get to everyone, but I asked most people if they thought it was worthwhile. I mentioned to some of them that, it could run in the neighborhood of $35,000, and then the majority of them really liked the service and wanted us to keep doing it. So now those are the people that are using it. Maybe the people that didn't show up might not have had the same opinion, but they were happy to have it. They liked the idea of having that, even though some of this stuff could be done by taking it to the landfill at different times during the year or taking it to Cornwall. But they liked having that option in our township.
And there was a wonderful audible that you'll note in there, the electronic waste I don't think was initially thought to be taken, and they took, is it 2 tons or two big trucks? Whatever it was, but it was a nice audible to allow people to do that and bring the trucks in. So thank you to the gentlemen who were there, and Belinda as well. Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you, through Mayor McDonald. Unfortunately, I was out of the area when this happened, so I was not able to see it, but I have participated in the past, and I'm so glad that it went well. It sounds like the new location was very well received. I still have concerns about the cost of the program, and so I would float, considering the decreasing participation, I would suggest perhaps moving to like an 18-month cycle versus doing it annually to try, because I mean, like it's a fairly large fixed cost component. And so I try to spread out the cost, or, reduce it on the annual basis, because I still think that this is a very high, it's a great service. People definitely value it, but maybe, even at 18 months, they would value it the same.
Oh, that is an interesting point. It might be something to come up with in a future info report or through that, because I think we agreed that we'd like to continue doing it as council. But yeah, 18 months or 2 years, maybe it benefits. I'm not trying to push it too far. It's just maybe same time every second year. That's a thoughtful comment. So, did you have a further comment to this? Oh, okay. Then we'll go to website CMS migration and refresh. Councillor Bougie.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Campo, for the info. I did not realize that our GHD was going to be discontinued, so it's great that we're kind of looking and searching for other alternatives. Now, GovStack, is that widely used for municipalities typically, is my first question, and while we're in this process and kind of looking into this, is there going to be kind of any AI features possibly?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. To answer your first question, Councillor Bougie, yes, GHD is, I would say, one of the primary companies that does design work and website management, or not the management, but the content management system for municipalities. I'd say there's probably, 2 or 3 that would be the primary ones used by municipalities. For clarity, GHD, it's not, I'm not proposing to switch from GHD. They'll still be in business. It's a new platform that they're using. So for the past, I want to say 12 years, we've utilized their content management system called iCreate. They're phasing iCreate out, and they're bringing in this new GovStack platform. I had the opportunity to sit through an extensive demo on it, and I'm very excited about the new features that will come into play. It's going to give us the ability to have much more control over the design features of the website and not just the text that goes in. As for your question regarding AI, I'm not sure, but certainly something that I can look into, and just for council's overall benefit or knowledge. AI has been a hot topic amongst the corporate services department in recent months, and we have been looking into opportunities to learn more about it and how it's going to be impacting municipalities. So Ms. Dixon and I are going to be sitting in on a webinar next month regarding AI and implications for municipalities, so there may be more to come on that topic.
Thank you.
If I may say, oh, sorry, go ahead, please. Councillor Jaworski.
We just recently at work are starting to be able to use Microsoft Copilot, and I have, like, is an AI function, and I certainly find it very helpful for writing emails much quicker and putting together documents and presentations. So there's even little things like that it can be very helpful for. But on this one specifically, whatever we do, please let's make sure that the search function works well. That's always been sort of like a bane of my, I find it difficult trying to search. So that's why I've made my own search structure for council document, like old agendas, so that I'm able to find information, because I find using our website, I don't know what it is exactly why I find it difficult to get the results I'm looking for, but hopefully with the new system that it'll be good or better.
All right, thank you. And then 10G, Good Roads, establishment of an Ontario Rural Road Safety Program. Councillor Jaworski.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor McDonald, when I saw this item of correspondence from Good Roads, it reminded me very much of one of the sessions at Good Roads that I had attended with regards to road safety audits, and that being a potential avenue for municipalities to help reduce their insurance premiums, which are just skyrocketing. And there was the presentations were very interesting, and sort of highlighting this issue of how how on rural roads we have more of these fatalities, and we have we have more risks, and we don't necessarily have the tax base to support all the improvements. So I think that this, I think what Good Roads here is presenting, I think could have a lot of value, both from minimizing injury to our residents, as well as potential cost savings, because as I understand through these presentations, they were explaining that when there is potential lawsuits, that sometimes these safety audit processes really can help bolster a township's defense in terms of certain situations. So I thought all around it's something that I think we should support.
Would there be interest around the table to support it? We can bring it back as a resolution, next one to vote with. Okay, perfect. We can bring that back for next council meeting to put it to vote. All right. So that was all for the consent agenda. Moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Bougie. Be it resolved that council accepts the items listed in the consent agenda. All those in favor? Carried. Confirming bylaw, oh yeah, no closed session. Moved by Counselor Jaworski, seconded by Counselor Bougie. Sorry, just to make sure I haven't missed anything, Okay. Be it resolved that bylaw 2024-71, being a bylaw to adopt, confirm, and ratify matters dealt with by resolution, be read a first, second, and third time, passed, signed, and sealed in open council this 21st day of October, 2024. All those in favor? Carried. And then adjournment. Moved by Counselor Bougie, seconded by Counselor Jaworski. I almost put Bougie and Jaworski together. Seconded by Counselor Jaworski. Be it resolved that Council of the Township of South Glengarry adjourn to the call of the chair at 9:21 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Have a good evening, everyone, and thank you.